All right, folks, thanks a lot for coming here today. So this is an open source project we just launched. My name is Merill Fernando. I'm a product manager in the Microsoft Entra team. But this Maester, this open source thing that we built is outside of my day job, so just a side passion that we built. Yeah, so before I start, just want to thank all the sponsors who made it possible today, and for Microsoft who allowed me to fly out all the way from Melbourne to be here this week and share in the PowerShell love. Right, so Maester, it's a security test automation framework. Well, you could use it for things outside of security as well. We just timed it so it launched today when for this session, and I shared this earlier in the day today. A lot of good response from the community, from everyone trying it out. So you are the first to sort of listen in on a session about Maester itself. Right, so just to set some context on why we built this, what reason is there is, so Gartner predicted, this was back in 2021, that more than 99% of cloud breaches would be because of preventable configuration. And this was in 2021, they mentioned it. And if you've been following the news, you'll know that it's sort of true, right? In 2024, we are seeing lots of security breaches every day, and it is coming out as things that were related to misconfiguration settings, because the cloud moves so fast, there are so many settings, and it's becoming hard. So there is also the Microsoft Digital Defense Report we publish every year from Microsoft. This was from last year as well, and one of the things they identified as well is misconfiguration and exposure of identity platforms specifically, because that's the gateway into the rest of the systems. It's a high vector that attackers are targeting. Right, so in reality, in a lot of tenants, people who have been managing Microsoft 365, this is usually what happens, right? You need to go in and make changes in your tenant. Maybe it's even conditional access policies or some settings. You rarely have a different tenant where you try things out. You just do all these things in production. So just to give you some examples, right, of a few customers I've been working with. So there was one customer that had like a conditional access policy that enforced MFA for all of their guests, and said, you need to sign out every 14 hours so that there's a fresh sign-in if you're a guest coming in. So they set up that policy, it was all put in place, and it was all good, or so they thought. A year later, they discovered that for almost a year, someone had gone and deleted the group or emptied the group that it was assigned to. So they didn't touch the conditional access policy itself. They just deleted the group. So the policy was all there, but it was not doing anything, right? And no one knew that they were in that state. The policies were there. They thought it was all working, because the employees are not guests. So they didn't use a guest identity. And the guests didn't complain that they were not getting MFA or they were getting signed out. So the guests were happy because they signed in on their home PC and it stayed signed in for the rest of the year. So that's an example of settings where it's not even something an admin makes a mistake. Could be related to that, but it could be various other things that could cause these issues, right? So that's the thing. That's one of the motivating factors for building what we are calling as Maester, like a test automation framework. What we wanted to do here was, a lot of you already in this state, right? You know DevOps, you know what it is, you use it. But to a lot of admins across the globe, it's something that's like magic, or like they don't understand it and it's either too hard. So it's not something they really want to think about when they're managing their Microsoft tenants. They like the graphic UI, they just click on things and they're happy with that. So what we want to do with Maester and this such is to bring these sort of practices to a broader audience of IT admins and cybersecurity folks, people who manage Microsoft Cloud tenants, things that are really very critical to an organization's data to protect themselves. So the usual DevOps flow is supposed to be that you make any change, it's all through an automation system. No one goes and touches the UI. You have everything in source code. You deploy changes, whether it's conditional access policies or your security config to configure Teams or SharePoint. That's sort of the nirvana, the nice world that everyone wants to be in, where it's all automated and you do those deployments. Now, it's a lot hard to start automating all of that and writing all of those in scripts for a lot of organizations, right? I think for this audience, you would say that's easy, right? That's what we do every day, and that's what you should be doing. But in reality, that's not what happens in a lot of orgs. So with Maester, what we're trying to target is the first few steps, which is, okay, you might not be able to configure, do all of that through code and use policy as code to deploy. But what we are saying is, let's try starting to test, because that's where you get some value immediately. You can have some tests written that test your policy of what the settings should be in a particular tenant, whether it's security related or otherwise. You can write those tests and you can keep validating, set up a daily automation, and you can follow that process. So that's the whole reason behind what we're building with Maester, and we want to make it very approachable to people who are not DevOps, right? So we have the instructions, the sort of the package that we build from the website to the guidelines to the actual module itself is to make it all really easy. So I'll give you a demo of how that works. I did a recording, but I'll show you what it is, right? So I start off by installing the Maester module. We've bundled it as a PowerShell module. We've included some out-of-the-box tests. These are all pester tests. So you would just need to say, so if I just say, it's an empty folder that I'm in. So we wanted to make it really easy for them. And so we included some tests. So you run this install Maester tests, and it installs a bunch of out-of-the-box tests that we've defined as part of the Maester team. We have this folder, and right now if you, let me open it in code. We've created these tests with the initial focus has been on Entra, and we've done a lot for conditional access policies, and there are all these other Entra-related tests that we've written as well. So we've made it really easy, so you don't even need to come into VS Code. You're doing all this in PowerShell. You install the module, and then we've written and invoke Maester, which is like invoke pester, just a wraparound of pester module itself. So it runs through a bunch of tests that we've done. It calls Graph API, and I'll dig a little bit into that. Goes through your tenant, pulls all of the different settings. We've written a bunch of tests that we think would be useful, and it generates this sort of report. So it takes the pester results that you get from the XML that you get and gives it in a way that's very accessible to users and IT admins. So you get a summary of all of your tests, a breakdown by category on what passed and what failed. So you go from not having Maester to having Maester and running this test. If you saw this, it took just 2 minutes, and that was part of the experience we wanted. So you could do it as a one-time thing. You run this, you get a bunch of tests. One of this is called the AIDSCAR. There was an MVP in Germany, Thomas, who built this Entra ID security config with lots of settings. He mapped it to the MITRE framework and came up with what the settings should be for that security level. And we go into the tenant, check if those settings are the same, and then if it's something that's failed, then that's called out. We built a lot more out-of-the-box policies related to conditional access as well. And so you go in there, you click through, you can see what are the policies it tested and the output it gave. And the neat thing is, it's not just the technical NUnit results. We give you sort of links to be able to click through. So this will actually take you into the conditional access blade, so you can open and view what the setting is that it needs to be fixed. Yeah, so this whole thing is sort of an HTML report that you generate, and it gives you these results from there. Any questions, queries on this so far? Yes.
What level of rights do you have to run this KPGA?
You need to have a reader access. So you need to consent to the permission first, but it needs a few directory scopes, so like a global reader. So it all depends on the tests that you need, and I'll come to how you can like write your own tests as well. So I was really happy to see all the Pester sessions this week, so many including Justin's workshop, because all of this is built on top of Pester. And with this, we hope lots more admins will get used to or learn about Pester as well and be able to start writing their tests. Right, so if I go back to my things, I'll ignore this because I just ran that. Yeah, so just to walk you through the framework, right? So we built Maester on top of Pester. So initially, our plan was just to write a bunch of Pester tests and put it on GitHub and give it to folks and be able to run it. So that's how we started. But as we worked on this over months, we realized for admins, running Pester, going through that and understanding what it is that they need to do was going to be a little harder. So we started wrapping it around with the Maester module was just born out of that. So we created this module. We include a bunch of commandlets for helping to write these tests. So those are basically Graph API calls, but we put in a lot of the logic into that, right? So that gives like a very usable way for admins. We wrote this emailing capability out of the box to sending out reports. And the whole interactive test report that you saw, again, an HTML-based thing that we generate out of that. So out of the box, we also have the AIDS card tests, the security config tests, and the intra tests. And since we launched today, we've had so many people reaching out to us saying, I want to add Azure-related tests to this. So we want to build this community of the different type of tests that people would want to include. Maybe it's about baselining, maybe it's about performance, whatever the different types of things, we want to build like a single platform that people could contribute Pester tests into. And it would be easy for admins to understand and reuse it themselves. And the most important part is custom tests, writing your own tests for your tenant. So you're creating a new security policy, a new conditional access policy, or you're creating a new security group, a simple thing, right? A group that you assign all the M365 licenses to that one group. So you need to make sure that group is always there, and you at least have the minimum number of users in that group. And so you can write a test just for that, and you have it running every day to make sure your tenant is in a healthy state. So as you introduce changes, you will know what is important for you, and you'll say, okay, let me put that in a policy. So that way, even if someone leaves the org, right, you might work for a company and then move off, the intent is all in code, and you like someone 5 years down comes, those tests would still be running. And if they make a conditional access change, which breaks that policy, you'll be able to know, okay, I've done something wrong, let me try and fix that. And the person who did those changes doesn't even need to be there in the organization, right? As long as those tests are there and they're running. Right, so just a quiz from what the name Maester is for. Do you remember what the pop culture reference is from? Game of Thrones, yeah. So Sam Tardy and the others. So the Maesters were like, they held all the knowledge and they knew the right ways of doing things. And you only have to read those books and follow the instructions. So in the same way, we want the Maester test or Pester tests to be the things that you code your environment config, the security, the intent more. When it comes to security, it's more the intent. What is the intent of what you want to do? Put that into code, right? So for those who know Pester, you'll go like, isn't this all just Pester, right? And like as I said, absolutely true, right? At the end of the day, the tests you write are just purely Pester tests. You can call Graph API or Azure or any API. It's just basic Pester tests. It's just taking Pester and applying it to your cloud. Because a lot of people are used to Pester to be just, your VMs, your machines, and infrastructure as code. And we want to make this a practice of, hey, thinking about using this for your cloud configuration as well, moving on to the next phase, right? So as I mentioned, the reasons why why we created Maester is to make it more approachable, right? So I'll give you an example, which you might or might not realize is, say, if I run this with the normal verbosity in Pester, and no, was it that one? Yeah. So this is how, if it just runs with the verbosity, and I know Justin said the other day, look how beautiful it gives you all the errors, and it's nice. So it's good for us devs, right? But when you go to an admin or the manager of the IT team, if you give this to them, they'll go like, what's this? What do I even do with this, right? So that's the reason we took this result out, and we created this sort of a nice, easy to understand report, which can be shared with folks, right? And then you build that over time. So it's basically taking the same JSON. We added some nice things in here and made the report more easier to understand. We translate the error result, and we give more meaningful information about what they should do. So you can go into Graph Explorer from here. You can go to the docs. So you can enrich your test with the information on what the admins should do, right? So another part of all of this is the website. So it's sort of like the companion to Maester. We built this with Docusaurus. I saw the session the other day, about creating docs sites and so on. So we give like all of these step-by-step installation guides, going and setting it up in GitHub, going through all of the steps, doing things like workload ID configuration, which is like using a more secure way of setting up identity auth, where you don't need secrets or certificates. So this GitHub steps, if you follow, a person can just set this up just using a browser. You can set up this daily automation. You just go import the repository. We have a sample repository that you have. You import it in. You set up the actions. We give you like a GitHub YAML file as well. Just follow the steps, copy the tenant ID across, and in about 10-15 minutes, you'll have like a daily automation that's up and running with those reports being generated. And we also include like an email notification as well, right? So that's all part of the flow, the bundle. So within about 10-15 minutes, you're not a DevOps person, but you'll be able to set this up. So we worked on creating this as a complete package. So you can, assuming someone who has no knowledge of DevOps or GitHub or even PowerShell can run it, set it up, and then find their way after they set it up to say, okay, now can I go and write my own test and customize it? And that's the flow we wanted to take. Right. So out of the box, I've told you about this test, and the key thing, the richness of this will come with custom tests, right? So the whole idea is you start writing your own test for your own tenant as you make changes and your configuration and your policies, you roll them out. So here's a simple example of this, right? So end of the day, it's a really simple Pester test, which anyone could have done even before Maester was introduced, right? Where, for example, you have a list of global admins that are defined, you know who they are. It's not going to change frequently. So you put that in code, and that's your intent, your policy. You put that in, and this test basically queries and finds out who's in the global admin role and gives it in an easy to understand English-like syntax, right? You say global admins should be in the approved global admins list, right? And the moment someone else is added, this test would fail. And then you'll know, right, someone's added someone as a global admin, right? It could be by mistake, or they could have legitimately added someone new. Then you would come in and update the test and say it's there. So it's a way for you to define that policy. The neat thing, the thing that started off Maester is this new thing in conditional access, which is a new what if API. So for those who don't know, conditional access is the security policy that you define in Intra or Azure AD, where you say whether you need MFA and things like that. There was no way to test it until basically today, right? I got permission. It's in public preview. It went out to public preview. I got the approval to sort of announce it today. So we created an easy-to-use API around it and showed with Pester. So what you can do is the intent here, for example, is accessing to SharePoint should require MFA, right? So you might write a document saying, okay, this is the company security policy. SharePoint access should require MFA, or Outlook should be MFA, or if you need to be on the local network before you can access the device, right? So you have a document and someone else writes the conditional access policy and puts it in, and over time things happen, they change the policies, and no one really knows if what they intended, the policy, is what is actually implemented, right? Is it the same? Does it get the green tick for your config? So this lets us run simulations against the conditional access engine. We pass in the inputs and it tells us whether the MFA policy will be applied or not. And here with Pester, you can define this policy. So you say SharePoint requires MFA, that's the policy, and then you write a sample, right? Like this user, it could be a bunch of users, one user or more, and then you say, okay, this user is trying to use the SharePoint app, and you say when they try to do that, the policy that results in it should contain MFA, right? So you have this set up, it's automated, and it's running every day, and the moment someone changes something in the policy, add some exclusions, etc., the test can fail, and you'll know, right, something's broken, and your policy is no longer being implemented. So that's the whole idea behind, like, one of the reasons we started Maester was, yes, the API is nice, but if you're not using it or writing tests like this, it doesn't really add much value. And this is where, like, part of Maester was born to be able to test that. So, for example, that thing I told you about the guest story, where they created a policy for guests and they expected MFA would be applied, something like this written for guests would have caught that up early, as soon as someone deleted the group, for example. Right? So identity is the sort of the new control plane. We are moving away from firewalls, and that is what's protecting everything. We write tests for basic code that we do, and this is one of the more important things, and it's becoming really complicated to as you evolve, so many different sorts of policies you need to set up. So Maester with Pester tests gives you this framework to test that. Right? So as part of this, we included GitHub, and I'll show you some examples. So if I switch to GitHub, so once you set it up in GitHub, the test will run, and we included this integration with Markdown, so you get like a neat result. So one of the issues I had is when I started this, I went looking for some package that would give a nice UI from the unit tests, and basically there was nothing. Like, it was all very cryptic, and it didn't give what we needed. So if you wanted the test, the test failed, you wanted a quick summary like this, see what passed and failed, and then we even go into the details of, okay, which one passed and what didn't fail. And it includes specific instructions about your tenant, saying, okay, these are the conditional access policies which have this particular thing we're checking for, so it got the green tick. Right, so all of that's integrated into that Maester, into the package sort of thing that we built. Same way we've done for Azure DevOps as well. So we have the Azure DevOps job. You have the test results, and you get this neat integration with Azure where you can see the things that are broken. Don't know why it's doing that. Yeah. So you get this, and you can even now assign a bug or a task to someone, and then have that person activated. So you get that neat integration with Azure DevOps and bring those DevOps practices to your tenant. Right. So yeah, so we want to add Azure automation, like give more guidance if you are using other tools on how you set it up. So all of that's part of the docs here. Right. Right. Yeah, so that's the integration. We do email alerts as well. So if I switch over to my email, let me see where I am. Yep. So if I open up email, so you can set up as part of the GitHub action, you can set up an email alert, and you get you can set up this email alert to go through. So every day you can have the job run and send an alert to a DL, etc. So it wraps it around with a nice experience for IT admins or the cybersecurity team to know if the policies they set up are all working the way they should be. Right. So yeah, that's it was all part of creating that easy to use scenario. Yeah. So again, the same practices you do with Pester, right? You find some bug or an issue, you find a security issue, then what you would do is write a test for it, and then now that test is running every day as a daily automation, and it will be able to pick up any issues, etc., that you run across. Yeah. So how am I doing on time? Almost on time. Yeah. Yeah. So this is the team. Fabian and Thomas are from Germany. Fabian did some Sentinel Pester tests that he wrote, and that's when I connected with him and said, like, look, I have this idea. Let's get together and build this. And then Thomas had this AIDS card that he was building, so we got together, and there are lots of tests we're adding, and it's more like we're looking for contributors, others to join in and expand, build on this, and start using it. Lots of others helped out. We have Fred here, Justin, and Andrew, who we shared ideas, got feedback on. Justin helped tell how to use Pester to read the values out, so we can give detailed results. So we got all of that working. So we used Platypus. There's the Alt3 Docusaurus is used for the site. So if you see in the website, you should show it to the website. It includes all of the different commands. You can say the invoke command. All of these docs, they all generated using all three, the Docusaurus integration. So this is all neatly tied in with that. So all of this is open source, the build process, etc., that you can go in and see. Same way with all of every test is documented. And we sort of give the out-of-the-box ones. We give reasons for why that test is there and how it maps to the MITRE framework and so on. Cool. Any questions? Please share your feedback for the session. Happy to answer any questions. Yeah.
So, are you shipping a version of Pester with your module, or are you being very specific about the version?
Yes. Yeah, good call. So if you're on Windows, you have this weird thing, right, with Pester when you're doing it for the first time. And we know everyone will stumble across it. So I had to test it out a few times and give the steps here. So where I say skip check and then do all of these things. So someone who's going just an out-of-the-box Windows box, they will hit less barriers. So I do include these steps there, and we do call it out in the FAQ as well and say, usually if you just run it, you'll hit this 3.4 conflict. So the first time experience is not going to be great if you're a completely new person, and hopefully if they followed this guide, if they just copy and paste that, it'll install the latest version of Pester.
I guess a follow-up question that was thank you for those instructions, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But more or less, there was a big change from 3.4 to 3.5, right? Are you preventing a way that if, say 3.7, 3.8, 4, whatever comes out from Pester,
right,
that people who are using this don't get broken by auto-updating Pester to the latest version available, and it's not
right. Yeah, that's a good call out. So yeah, we haven't thought of that. You should definitely. Hopefully, there won't be breaking changes with the minor releases. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so I was wondering, so it looked like it was pretty scoped to the conditional access policy right now. I'm just curious if you guys have plans to expand the features, like the other graph endpoints, for example,
Yes. Yeah. We do want that. We just didn't have the time. So we thought, let's focus and do one thing well. And so we focused on conditional access, and the Entra tests cover a wide number. So the Entra ID security config, they do a lot more, like FIDO2 and various other settings. So it tests. There are about like 40 odd settings and configuration that it tests. But yeah, definitely the plan is we're looking for more collaborators for like Intune. We know that's like the CISA have their set of rules as well. So we want to sort of integrate that as well in, so you can just run it and use the same framework, because at the end of the day, they all do the same thing. We wanted to just create a framework that can be repeatable, where you can plug in, like end of the day, these are pester tests, right? So you can plug in anything, whether it's a CISA, reports, etc. You can do that. We want to just give more guidance here. So the CISA stuff we want to add and say this is how you can do, because you will hit issues, right? When it's running in GitHub and all the different things, like how do you do the auth is another common thing. So with auth, like this, creating this doc itself took time to say how to use GitHub using workload federation, where you don't have any secrets, you don't need to worry about rotation, so it's very secure. So we gave all that, but we also included like as a fallback how you can just use secret, but it's not recommended at all. And the right way is to do it without any secrets or certificates. It's a really easy way. Like you can get this if you follow the steps. In about 15 minutes, you'll have it working just by copying and reusing this.
So it does require an app registration.
Yes.
You're not able to just run it on command.
You can run it on the command line without anything. So like the demo I showed you just now, I just did a connect. We put connect Maester, which puts in all the scopes, but it's basically calling connect graph. So I can do.
You would already have to have
The
permissions.
Yes, yeah. Initially, the global admin, whoever needs to consent to those permission scopes that are required, and then you can do that. So you can run it from the command line and just have it working, and you're happy with the report. You can stop there, but the better you get, the more use once you set up the automation and have it running every day.
Right. Okay.
So thank you for supporting the device quick flow out of the box too. And it's super quick, so awesome.
Cool.
And the question I have, is the team accepting pull requests for new tests?
Sorry?
Are you accepting pull requests for new tests?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. It's an open source project, and the more folks that want to join and share tests for the different products, because there are so many, right? Like we do tests for like Entra or something, but you have Intune, you have Sentinel, and like various other products. It doesn't need to be even Microsoft product. Like I'm thinking others like Jamf and various other apps. As long as there's an API, you can build. This is more about bringing the DevOps, SecDevOps experience to people who have not done it before. So like for people in this conference, this might all sound like really simple, you know that. I'm preaching to the audience, right? But this is more intended for a lot more, the IT audience, but it gives you guardrails and the guidance at a higher level.
Is there a straightforward process for excluding a test?
Yes, so we are working on that, which is where Fred's help will come in. So we want to use like a config file that you can define and say what to include or exclude. Right now, the way to do it is to do a copy paste. So we wanted to get it right, so we left it till after the first release. So if I switch to VS Code, if I can find it. So what we wanted to do is, what we've done is we've created these folders. If you see here, we've created this folder called custom, and the idea is you would put your own tests in here. For now, what you can do is simply copy these tests across into this custom folder, and then you can work on them. The other thing I wanted to call out is, over time, we are going to be adding new tests, right? More PRs or fixing issues in the out-of-the-box tests. So we included this update Maester command, and then you run that. It will. What we are doing is we're actually embedding the pester test into the module, so you don't need, it doesn't go out. Every new build includes the latest tests, and we just ask just prompt you before we overwrite all those existing tests that we have, just telling that you're going to do. So the idea is you would put your changes into that custom folder. It's more like a convention. Into the custom folder, you put in all of your tests. We don't touch any of that. But things that are in the Maester folder and the AIDS car, we would overwrite, but we always, we ask a lot of prompts before we remove and add all those things in. And that way, that's an easy way to sort of get the latest version of the pester tests that we are shipping. Sorry?
There is a bug at the beginning. It complains that you need to install a newer, but you already have it.
Yes. No, I have 106. Yeah, so yeah, this is, I think, the import process. I think after you update, I need to fix that. I think when you do an import, it reloads it, right? So even though I installed it, it didn't refresh the one. Oh, no, it's still, yeah, I need to fix it. So this particular code, it was actually Copilot that gave. So I put the comment saying, to do, find the latest module and do it. And so it generated the code. It did work fine. So what it does is it does a find module, and then it just checks with the install module and sees if the version number is different. But I think maybe it's loading something different. Yes, I need to fix that. The other one with Justin in the room is, so with these tests, you can't use the pester test module because you need to do an authentication, and I think I can't do the auth in that, right? So there's a catch. I can do just run test like this if I do a connect from there, and like that works. But I'm not able to test it from here because I think
There's a setting in the pester test extension where you can tell to run in the PowerShell term. Typically, my extension runs in its own separate PowerShell run space. That's what's
Right.
considered now. But there's a setting you can do so it all runs
inside the
PowerShell extension. So then
right.
you could do that connect and have that.
Right. So it'll have the context. Yeah.
So if you check the settings,
Cool.
Could you
Yeah.
repeat what I said for the recording?
Sorry. No.
Repeat what I said for the recording.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, so just to repeat what Justin said, there's a setting, and we'll share the setting, right? There's a setting where you can say to use the PowerShell version, not the one that's there out of the box. Use the extension PowerShell console, and then it'll use the same context of the console PowerShell. And so then whatever you're connected as, it will be able to run in that. Because out of the box, it runs in a different run space, which doesn't have the tokens or the authentication, so that wouldn't work. But we'll put all of that in the docs about using, doing those click-throughs to run. Cool. Any other questions? Yes.
In my organization, we have a bunch of pester tests that we've written that we can run against basically any VM on our on-prem environment. And I think it might be neat to have a front end like this. Has there been any consideration for splitting out the front end from all of the tests?
Yeah, so when we were building this itself, Fabian said, this would be the reporting in the HTML is really cool. We should pull it out as a different module that you can use it and pass it into the module and do even now there are different commandlets, so you can pass that in and send it through. But yeah, we can definitely do because creating a nice looking report like this is a challenge. And if you look in the module, you can see how we do it.
Theoretically, though, you can just import any tests.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Because it's just running it's basically pester, right? So it takes those reports out and it does it. We did add some extra commands. So if I open Maester, so this is the source code for Maester, but we did add some commandlets for. Let me see if I get to the right folder. Docs. Yeah. So in PowerShell, we have this commandlet called add empty result detail. So this is the one where you can pass in like which conditional access policies were failing. It supports like a markdown format for each test. So you can, like I'll open some of these tests. Give me a second. Yeah, so we have all these tests, and for each test, you can also have a markdown where you sort of describe what the issue is. And that is what we use when we generate the report. So when you write the commandlet for a given test, you can include this markdown, or you can call, there's a method saying add test results, and you can pass in, the conditional access policies or the groups. And that is how we create those deep links in to say, okay, you found an issue, this is where you need to go and fix it. So yeah, we spent a bit of time trying to get that experience nice, because if you're left with just the errors, you still need to now go and search and find which policy was causing the issue, and like that cycle should be short. Cool. Sorry. Cool. All right, folks, thanks so much. Hope you enjoyed the session.